So I have to ask you about something that happened to me yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting in traffic, I mean, dead stop, just absolute gridlock. And my mind is just racing with, I don't know, 50 different
Yep,
anxieties.
the usual.
The usual chaos, right?
Mhm.
Deadlines, family stuff. And then out of nowhere, I
Yeah.
felt this shift.
A shift. You mean like a mood swing?
No, see, that's the thing. It felt deeper than a mood. It was this sudden, just inexplicable stirring in my chest, kind of tug.
Hmm.
And I sat there for the next 20 minutes just trying to analyze it, you know? Was this some deep spiritual intuition telling me I need to change my whole life?
Mm.
Or was it just the triple shot latte I had an hour before?
The classic caffeine versus conviction dilemma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly distressing. It is so hard to tell the difference between a genuine spiritual nudge and just, my own emotions playing tricks on me.
You are definitely not alone in that confusion.
Yeah.
In fact, that exact tension is pretty much the centerpiece of the source material we're looking at today. We're doing a deep dive into the teachings of Watchman Nee, and specifically his whole breakdown of the conflict between the soul and the spirit.
And before anyone thinks, oh, soul and spirit, those are just, poetic synonyms for the same thing, let me just stop you, because I thought that too.
A lot of people do.
But Nee argues that treating them as synonyms is actually, well, dangerous.
It is. He argues that most of us are living in a state he calls being soulish.
Soulish. It just sounds like a made-up word, doesn't it?
It does, but it's a really crucial concept. I mean, the mission of this whole deep dive is to decode that danger. We're going to look at why living by the soul leads to burnout and spiritual confusion,
And what the alternative is.
and what it actually looks like to walk by the spirit. And I have to warn you, the solution he proposes isn't just, try harder. It's much more radical than that.
Okay, well, let's get into the definitions first.
Yeah.
Because this is where I really got tripped up reading the material. I've always used soul and spirit interchangeably. If I say my soul is weary or my spirit is weary, I basically mean the same thing. I'm tired. How does the source distinguish them?
It's a really sharp distinction in this theology. So according to the source, the soul is, well, it's essentially you, your natural self. It creates a kind of triad: your mind, your will, and your emotions.
Okay, so my personality, my ability to do math, my feelings about this traffic, my decision to turn left or right, that's all my soul.
Correct. And it draws us toward what seems good or logical to our natural eyes. But the spirit is different. The source describes the spirit as the deepest part of man.
Okay.
It's the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit. It's the organ for contacting God.
The organ for contacting God. That's a really interesting way to put it.
Well, think of it like this, and this might clarify the confusion you felt in traffic. You use your eyes to see color, right?
Right.
You use your nose to smell smoke. If you tried to use your ears to smell a flower, it just wouldn't work.
Right. Wrong input, wrong sensor.
And Nee argues that the soul, so the mind and emotions, they cannot contact God directly. You can think about God with your mind, but you can only know God through the spirit.
Okay.
The problem is, for most people, the spirit is stifled. He uses this image of a lamp about to go out.
Because the soul is just too loud.
Exactly. We are so dominated by our thoughts, our feelings, our desires, that the spirit is basically buried under all that noise.
This makes sense of that soulishness concept then. It's not that we're being evil per se.
Not at all.
It's that we're trying to navigate a spiritual life using the wrong instruments. We're trying to smell the flower of their ears.
Precisely. And the source warns that living this way, being soulish, is just incredibly unstable. There's a metaphor in the text that I think you like.
Oh, the leaves in the wind. That one, yeah. That hit a little too close to home.
It's a very vivid image.
It says that living by your emotions is like being, dry leaves carried by the wind. When the wind blows up, circumstances are good, you get a promotion, sun is shining, you're flying high, you feel spiritual, grateful, connected.
And then when the wind stops,
You just crash to the ground. You feel abandoned. The source calls this a dangerous dance. And I realized reading this, that's pretty much my default setting.
you judge your spiritual health by your emotional temperature.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is, according to the source, like walking on thin ice, because emotions are volatile by nature. They weren't designed to be the captain of the ship.
They're reactive.
They're reactive. So if you rely on them to interpret God's will, you're not following the spirit, you're just following your own serotonin levels.
That is a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
Essentially, I'm using a compass that just spins every time I get hungry or tired.
And the source backs this up in Scripture, right? It references Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things. The argument is that your heart, in this context, the seat of your emotions and natural desires, is a totally unreliable narrator.
But wait a minute. I have to play devil's advocate here. Are we saying emotions are bad? I mean, God gave us emotions. Jesus wept. Are we supposed to just become, like, stoic robots?
No, that's the common pushback. The source isn't saying emotions are evil, it's saying they're subservient. The problem isn't having emotions, the problem is being led by them. When the soul leads, we are blind. Which, brings us to this concept of the veil.
Right, the veil. This is where the source suggests that this confusion isn't just annoying. It actually blocks our vision.
Yeah, think of the veil like static on a radio. The spirit is broadcasting a signal, a direction, a peace, a conviction. But the soul is just cranking out white noise. The mind is analyzing, the emotions are screaming, the will is planning. And the static is so loud, you literally cannot hear the broadcast.
So when I felt that stirring in traffic, the reason I couldn't figure out what it was because my static was at maximum volume.
Very likely, yes. And this leads to why this distinction matters so much. Humans love the tangible, right? We want fireworks, we want a burning bush, we want to feel God in our emotions because that's what makes sense to our soul.
We want the cinematic experience.
Totally. But the source argues that the true movement of God often happens in quietness. There's a reference to Revelation 16:15, "Behold, I come as a thief."
A thief. That's such a strange image for God.
It is, but it implies stealth. A thief doesn't hire a brass band to announce his arrival.
He moves quietly.
He moves quietly. It requires extreme alertness to notice a thief in the house. But because our souls are so overstimulated, bombarded by information, social media, that urgency to do something, our spiritual sensitivity is just dulled. We miss the thief because we're watching the TV at full volume.
So the soul acts as a buffer. It keeps us busy with all this surface-level noise, so we miss the deep-level signal.
And that leads to a very serious vulnerability. The source explains that when we live by the soul, we lose the ability to cooperate with God's plan. But worse, it opens a back door for the enemy.
This part really surprised me. The source explicitly says that the enemy, Satan, doesn't usually attack the new creation, the spirit, directly.
Right. The theology here is that God's life is in the spirit. It's protected. It's resilient. So if you're an enemy strategist, you don't attack the fortress where the king is.
No.
You attack the supply lines. You attack the little village outside the walls.
The village being the soul.
Exactly. He exploits the remnants of the old nature. He targets the mind with doubt. He targets the emotions with fear or offense. He targets the will with pride.
And the source notes that he incites self-sufficiency.
That's the one.
Self-sufficiency. I usually think of sin as, doing bad things, stealing, lying. But you're saying trying to handle it myself is the attack vector.
That is the ultimate trap. And this is where the text gets really, really nuanced. The source notes that even seemingly spiritual activities can be soulish.
Okay, unpack that.
Yeah.
Because if I'm volunteering at a soup kitchen or I'm preaching a sermon or helping my neighbor, how can that be a trap?
It all depends on the fuel source. If you are doing those things driven by the soul's energy, your own grit, your need for validation, your desire to be seen as a good person, then it's soulish.
So I can be doing the absolute right thing, but if I'm doing it to feed my own ego, or just because I'm a stubborn high achiever, I'm actually in the danger zone.
You are. It's a mask. The source actually calls it the good trap.
The good trap.
We think because the activity is religious or moral, it must be of the spirit. But Nee argues that anything originating from the self, even good works, is rejected by God because it bypasses the need for dependence.
It's basically saying, God, I got this.
Yeah.
I don't need your power. I have my own willpower.
Precisely. And that self-sufficiency is what the enemy loves. Because a self-sufficient Christian is a powerless Christian. It hides the deep need to die to ourselves.
Which brings us to the solution. And I have to say, I did not love the solution.
Most people don't.
I wanted a life hack. I wanted 3 steps to a quieter soul. But the source offers something much more violent. It talks about the cross. And not just as a historical event 2,000 years ago.
No, in this context, the source describes the cross as a mechanism, a tool for daily transformation. The goal is for the old creation, that soul life, to be completely crucified experientially.
Experientially. That means feeling it, living it. That just sounds destructive.
It does.
I mean, we live in a culture of self-care and self-actualization. This sounds like self-destruction.
It sounds that way to the soul. But let's look at it differently for a second. The source argues that your self, that anxious, striving, easily offended roller coaster part of you, is actually a cage.
A cage.
Yes, think about it. When you're driven by your emotions, are you free? Or are you a slave to whatever happens to you that day?
I'm a slave, yeah.
When you're driven by your need for approval, are you free? Or are you constantly hustling?
Okay, when you put it that way,
Yeah.
it feels like a treadmill,
Right. So crucifying the soul isn't about hurting yourself. It's about breaking the cage.
but it feels like death.
It feels like death because we identify with the cage. We think we are the cage.
We think, if I give up my right to be offended, who am I? If I give up my constant planning and worrying, will I just disappear?
That is the great fear. But the source is really firm on this. There is no middle ground. You can't negotiate with the old creation. You can't say, okay, I'll let the spirit lead on Sundays, but my anxiety gets to drive the car on Monday.
The source calls for totality.
Totality. And it involves rejecting not just sin, which is obvious, but rejecting the natural life of the soul, your preferences, your clever plans, even your dearest emotions.
It's a process of deconstruction.
A painful deconstruction. The scripture it references is Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live. The argument is that as long as that capital I is living, my ego, my will, I can't walk in the spirit. The frequency is just jammed.
Okay, I get the theory.
Yeah.
The soul is loud, self-sufficient, and ultimately a trap. The spirit is quiet, dependent, and powerful, and we need the cross to break the soul's dominance. But
Yeah.
I live in the real world. I have a job. I have kids. I can't go live in a monastery. What does walking in the spirit actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon?
It's a great question. We can't just stay in the clouds. And the source gives some very practical indicators. The first one is vigilance regarding silence. We have to cultivate times where the voices of the soul are deliberately silenced.
Which is incredibly hard because the soul hates silence. When it gets quiet, my brain instantly starts making lists.
That's the withdrawal symptom. But there's another indicator that I find even more practical. It's about pace.
Pace.
The source suggests you can distinguish the soul from the spirit by the speed at which it operates. The soul wants results now.
Cool, yeah.
It operates in haste, anxiety, and this frenetic desire for control.
Oh, that hits home. I need an answer immediately. I need
Yeah.
to fix this right this second.
Exactly. If you feel a driving, panicked urgency that pushes you to override your peace, that is almost always the soul. The spirit, by contrast, operates in depth and patience. It reminds us of Zechariah 4:6, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit.
So slowing down isn't just a wellness tip. It's a spiritual weapon.
It really is. If you find yourself rushing to force a door open, you are likely operating in the flesh. The spirit waits for the door to unlock.
That is actually a really helpful diagnostic tool. Am I rushing? If yes, check the source.
Correct. And the second practical application is community.
I found this one interesting because the whole soul versus spirit thing feels so internal, you know, very private. Why do we need other people for this?
Because of blind spots. The source is clear. God places us in community because we are not self-sufficient. Remember, the soul is deceitful. It can convince you that your anger is righteous indignation when it's actually just wounded pride.
Right. I can convince myself I'm being a truth teller, but really I'm just being a jerk.
Exactly. And we need others to help us spot it. Bear one another's burdens, as Galatians says. Sometimes the burden we need help bearing is our own soulishness. It takes real humility to let someone say, hey, I think you're reacting out of your ego right now.
That sounds excruciating.
It is. But that leads to the third practical point, which is the paradox of victory through weakness.
This is the part that feels the most countercultural. The world says victory is strength, dominance, capability.
And the source says spiritual victory lies in our weakness. Because when we surrender, when we finally admit, I can't handle this, we stop blocking the signal. We stop trying to power the machine with our little AA batteries, and we plug into the grid.
Surrender isn't losing. It's tagging in the ultimate power source.
Precisely. The source references 2 Corinthians 12:9. My power is made perfect in weakness. As long as you feel strong, God kind of stands back. When you're at the end of yourself, God steps in.
So let's loop back to that fear we talked about earlier. The fear that if I let go of my soul, my control, my identity, that I'll just lose myself.
And the source addresses this so beautifully. The expert insight here is that resisting the cross is actually resisting freedom. You aren't losing your identity. You're losing the distortion of your identity.
The loss of the soul leads to the gain of the spirit.
Yes. Think about the results that are described in the text. It's not a lobotomy. It's peace that isn't based on circumstances. It's joy that isn't based on your emotions.
And relationships marked by compassion rather than conflict. That was a big one for me.
It's huge. When we live in the soul, everything is personal. Someone cuts you off. Offense. Someone critiques your work. Defense. The soul is just a raw nerve.
Because it's all about protecting the me.
Right. But when we live in the spirit, we move from reacting to seeing others through the eyes of Christ. We stop taking things personally because the person who would take it personally has been crucified.
That is a profound way to put it. If I'm dead to my ego, you can't hurt my ego.
Exactly. The Source calls this the resurrection principle. The cross is the door to resurrection. We're emptied so that God can fill us. It's a total exchange. My anxiety for his peace, my striving for his power.
It reminds me of that wind analogy the Source uses near the end from John 3:8. The wind blows where it pleases.
You hear its sound, but you don't know where it comes from. That is the mystery of the spirit-led life.
I love that image because it shifts the responsibility. If I'm in a rowboat, I have to row until my arms fall off to get anywhere. That's the soul.
Striving, sweating, exhaustion.
But if I'm a sailboat, I don't produce the wind. My job is just to raise the sails.
That's the spirit. But, and here's the kicker, raising the sails requires the daily, difficult work of letting go of the oars. You can't row and sail at the same time.
You have to trust the wind will actually show up.
And that is the leap of faith. The Source leaves us with a really challenging question. Are you trying to finish by means of the flesh what you began by means of the spirit?
We start with faith, but then we try to maintain it with our own grit.
Exactly. So the challenge is, are we willing to embrace the discomfort of the cross, the death of our self-sufficiency, to find the true rest of the spirit? It's not an easy yes. It goes against every instinct we have. But according to Watchman, it's the only path to a life that actually works.
It's definitely something to sit with in the quiet, if you can find some quiet today.
I highly recommend making some. Turn off the radio, put down the phone, see what you hear when the static finally clears.
I think I'm going to try that on the drive home. No podcast, no music, just listening.
Let me know if you hear the thief.
I will. Thanks for walking us through this deep dive. It's heavy, complex stuff, but I feel like I have a vocabulary for that internal tug of war now.
That's the goal. Awareness is always the first step out of the fog.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.